And we're on. Emmanuela Pintus, thanks for being on Fitness and Consciousness.
Thank you for having me.
So you are into yoga and bodybuilding.
Yes.
And you've competed in bodybuilding, and you just got back from India. Like, let's start, I guess, at the beginning, and then we'll
Okay.
move on. So, how did you get your start in bodybuilding?
I started bodybuilding before yoga. I started bodybuilding when I was about, my first competition, I was 22, I think. But I started working out when I was 17. And then I did bodybuilding for like 3 or 4 years, and I did well. And then I went into figure, because that was like a new category. And it's for like more aesthetic, like it's more popular now, but that's when figure like first started. And I wanted to be smaller, so I did that for a while. And I took a couple of years off every so often. But yeah, I've been doing it I continued with figures. I've been doing the whole thing, the whole bodybuilding figure thing for about 20 years. And then yoga, I got into just a couple years after that. And I just started doing local community center things. And now yoga is huge. There's like 8 studios in the city at least. And I work at like 3 or 4 of them. I'm all over the place with my yoga.
And you're in Toronto?
Windsor. So just
Windsor.
4 hours away from Toronto. Really close to Detroit, right over the border.
So what do you think that the yoga does for your bodybuilding? Like, how do you think they go together? Because I think there's maybe a lack of knowledge of, when it started, well, not started exactly, but like Mysore Palace, like Krishnamacharya and Patabi Joyce and Iyengar, and there was like the yoga, and then in the next room over it was like more like bodybuilding, physical culture kinds of stuff. And so there was like this combined world.
They practiced it together though back in the day. The yoga, they used it, the both of them. They did like the calisthenics and the yoga together in India. So I don't think it was completely separate. But what I'm doing, I've always been, working out, and I've always included stretching and mobility in my working out. So it was always natural for me to stretch and be aligned. And then when I started taking yoga, it just made my bodybuilding better because I was more aware, and then I have a better range of motion in my joints for proper movement. And I now have a lot of bodybuilder friends that I can see like after 20 years of working out, even 5 years of working out, and they're just very like muscle bound. And I do massage. So I got a lot of my friends asking me to massage them to help them with their tightness. And I'm like, no, I have a better thing for you. So now I'm doing the yoga and bodybuilding together. So I'm trying to help bodybuilders incorporating my yoga.
And did you use some of the techniques you learned in yoga in your like posing routines? And so people like see like, oh, she's different, she has something different going on?
Yeah. There's one video of me, one of my routines on YouTube.
Oh,
yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and I do a couple yoga poses in it. It's probably 20 years old, that video.
Well,
yeah, that's so funny.
I didn't find that in my detective work. I'll have to go back and.
It's under my name. It's up there,
yeah. Yeah. So when like, how far did you get? Like, how competitive were you? Like, what?
In the figure and the bodybuilding, I've done both international. So nationals in Canada, I've always placed like in the top 3, and then to place top. When you place top 3, you're then able to go into the international. So I did like the Arnold Amateur a couple times, North Americans a couple times. Didn't place that great there. I was like, my best placing I think was 6th maybe fifth. So I'm always off a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just always just right close. I'm never like there, which is fine.
And do you think that the ones, like we were talking a bit about steroids, do you think that
That
like
was
that's what kept you from the
yeah,
podium, was the
yeah.
difference between I'm not willing to go that?
Maybe not. But I think that it would have helped me a lot. That was always my issue, was I was never lean enough. I'm not saying that you can't get there with those steroids. I'm just saying that if I would have done it, it would have helped me a lot. Because like I was always just a little bit soft. You know, and you can get there with like dieting properly and all that stuff, which I did the best I could. I have always coached myself.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I did my last show, was the first time I ever tried anything, and I looked fantastic. Like I was super lean, energy levels were great. You know, like I didn't have to. I mean, I trained just as hard, but like the results were 10 times more. But not something that I want to do. I did it the one time and I didn't like it. I didn't like the coming off of it, you know. And then it's all hormonal, right? So who knows what it's doing to you, like long term. So
What was it like coming off of it? Because you just did, so like you just did, I don't know a lot about steroids, but so you just did like one cycle, like a 6-week cycle or a 12-week cycle, or?
I did 6 weeks, which is not a lot, but I did a lot. I did 4 different kinds at once. One was an anti-estrogen, which I just think is crazy for a woman to take, but that's what gets you really lean. And then one was to help build muscle and preserve muscle when you're dieting. When I came off of it, I just came off of it. And that's the other thing too. I didn't have anyone like a doctor telling me what to take. I just kind of like asked around, and then that's what I took. And then coming off of it, the same thing. I didn't have any guidance. So that rebound was terrible. Like after any competition, the rebound is terrible. But like on top of the food and everything else, and then you've got your hormones all over the place too with coming off of the steroids. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it. I just did it. I just didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. So what did it feel like when so you just like quit, and then like how long until you start feeling?
Months. I was all bloated and puffy because that's the thing. You're doing the anti-estrogen, and then you stop taking it, so then your estrogen gets up again, and then all the puffiness and whatever else happens. So yeah, months, at least 4 or 5 months.
Now, are they testing, or is the testing a joke, or?
No, there is tested shows, and that was the thing. I was competing for 20 years, and then I did the steroids on the very last show that I did, only because it was the last show I was going to do. And I'm like, well, might as well. Everyone keeps telling me I should do it. Might as well just do it, just see what happens. But I forgot my train of thought. What was I just talking about? So
The testing.
The test. Okay, so then I did the natural route. So those they test all top 3, and then those ones are very strict. They use the same guidelines as the Olympics. So even like ephedrine, you can't have, like a fat burner, you can't have it. Some supplements, they'll have things in it that are tested that you can't have, like banned substances. So I did that for a long time. I did both streams, but the regular ones, the more popular ones, those aren't tested for drugs or whatever. It's kind of unspoken, like everyone knows, everyone does it.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes it such an early imprint on, because I was probably like 7 years old getting the muscle and fitness magazines and Flex and all that. So I see these guys, and then I read like what workout they do. Okay, you do 4 sets, 10. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to look like Arnold, and I'm going to look like Dorian Yates, and it hasn't worked yet. Then you find out like later on, it's like, oh, they're juiced to the gills. And
no, that's not true. Those guys, specifically those guys you just mentioned, they would have been big no matter what. Like they have the genetics, that they put in the work, like they eat the right foods, the whole bit. Like people like that are champions no matter what they do.
Yeah, I heard Dorian say on, I think it was the Joe Rogan podcast, or that like the guys now are taking way more than what he was doing, and he was doing, but and then people are coming up and asking him, "Hey, do you know about this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do, but do you?"
Yeah,
and it's like they have no idea. They just want to get big, and they don't understand.
That's the mentality now. But that's the thing. Everyone thinks that that's what you need to do. Like I hear people who are, 20 years old and they got a coach. Now everyone's got a coach. Back when I was doing it, no one had a coach. This new thing, like within the last 5 years or so, someone who's done one show, maybe two, now they call themselves a coach, and then they get 20-year-old clients who they give steroids to at 20 years old, which is insane to me. But they do it because they think that that's what they're supposed to do. Their coach told them to do it. So the whole thing's just kind of, not run properly. There's great coaches out there too, though, right? It's just you got to do your homework and find out.
Yeah, it'd be cool if it was. Because I think even probably the ones that are tested, there's going to be ways around it. There's guys that know the secrets. Well, this stuff isn't tested yet, but if there could be some sort of thing where it's they just don't do it, and yeah, they're not going to look like they do, but it can still look really awesome without them.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I've seen some competitions now where it's guys are in board shorts so that they don't have to do squats anymore, and it doesn't very
but
many.
That's the thing. When you get to the pro level, those guys, their physique, they do squats. You have to do squats. Even though you got the board shorts on, you still have to be proportionate. You can tell. But yeah, you see those guys in the gym, they were just training upper body or whatever.
Yeah. I meant more maybe there is a way to compete and really not be on steroids. Cause if they're coming in weighing 170, you can be pretty ripped, but maybe they're not on steroids. It's just like you're talking about the 20-year-old or who thinks, oh, now this is how it is. This is my life. I can either take some of this and I can get sponsors and I can make a living out of this, or the guy that will do it is going to do it instead. And we're doing the same thing at the gym.
Yeah.
And yeah.
You know what though? I see a lot of guys who take it and they're not even planning to compete. A lot of guys. It's more common now. You just find it more, there's more people doing it without the intention of getting on stage.
Yeah. That's a weird one too. If they could just listen to some of the old timers that some of them are pretty open about it now, the Yates and those guys. He was he was huge when I was growing up and looking at him man, that guy's 80 pounds more than Arnold or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But so kind of the antithesis of steroids is kind of the yogi. So you recently got back from India. So why did you go to India and what was your experience there?
I decided to do my first yoga teacher training probably about 5 years after I started doing yoga. I found one in Michigan. So I was doing that once a week for 5 months. That was my first experience with yoga teacher trainings. And I've done 5 or 6 since. And then I wanted to, I think every yoga teacher eventually wants to go to India because that's the birthplace of it. And, you just feel like you should go. So I found my teacher, I was just Googling, and he's in India. He was Canadian as well. So he was back and forth, very authentic. And I don't know, I resonated with what I read. I didn't actually meet him. So I did that 4 weeks in India. The first time it was, I think, 2006. And then I did some more trainings in Thailand, Peru. So anyways, I went back to India again 5 years ago with my same teacher for the 6 weeks, the intensive. And then I just went to the same ashram with my teacher last month. So this past time I went, it was just to go. It wasn't to do specific teacher training, but just to be around them, I learned.
Yeah, India is like one of the only places that I really want to go to, like a different country. Like it'd be kind of nice to go to a bunch of different places, but India for some reason has always attracted me to it. And this a friend of mine went. She went with her yoga teacher training class, and she was traumatized. Like they get off the plane, and
Oh, no.
and the people that she was with were like, "Oh, this is so beautiful," and she's like, "What are you looking at?" She's like, "This is not beautiful. This is nasty."
Yeah.
There was like a woman that came up to her and tried to sell her baby,
Yeah.
and there was like, so she was like in some like hotel, or not quite a hotel, some kind of room where she was sleeping, and she had like a knife by her, and she couldn't sleep because she was like, she'd be walking by and the men are grabbing, and
Oh my.
like it's a whole
Well, that
different,
does sound dramatic. I wouldn't
yeah,
want to do that either.
yeah, she got
Yeah.
a whole different kind of enlightenment than what she was
Yeah.
expecting, I think. So what was your?
I specifically chose my teacher, not specifically, but one of the reasons why I chose him at the very first time I went was that he, like, part of the teacher training was they had like airport pickup. Like, that was huge, you know, because I was like terrified to travel by myself. So I can see her point. If you're not taken care of, it's scary for sure. Yeah. And a couple times saw a woman, you know, the baby was like head back, gaunt face, like it's this big, and it looks like it's not going to survive the next couple days. Like it's terrible to see, you know, people like everywhere. You know what I mean? Like it's just not what we're used to. Like you don't have any personal space, that's for sure. So I can see your point for sure.
And then you had a tooth thing.
Yeah. So I was having a toothache for like a couple days, and it just got progressively worse. And then one night after, like, it was about 2.5 weeks in, and I was like, it was unbearable. Like my whole face hurt. And I was like, I need to do something. Like I was taking Advil, and it stopped like working. So like 1 in the morning, I'm Googling like dentist in Rishikesh. That's where I was staying. So there was like a place like up the street, and I'm like, okay, opens at 9 a.m. I'm gonna go. And so I went to like 5 a.m. meditation and 8 a.m. yoga class, and then I asked my teacher, who's like from there, and he's like, no, don't go there. He's like, go to the hospital. And that was a whole. We are so lucky where we live, you know, to have the nice things. But great dentist. She was great. I thought it was a cracked, or I thought I lost a filling or something. But apparently I had a cracked tooth underneath the filling. That the filling was fine. It was the tooth that was broken. And she said I needed a root canal, which she would have done. Probably would have been like a fraction of what I paid for here. But I just said, no, I'll just take painkillers. And then I came home early and then just got it taken care of here.
Yeah, when I was.
I don't feel like I left early. I was there 3 weeks. I only left 5 days early. I got great yoga experience. I got great like travel experience, met a lot of great people. So it was a great trip.
When I was reading your Instagram, like you said, you were at the hospital for it, and there's no soap in the bathroom, and
No,
it's
it
a
was really
hospital.
crazy. It was a hospital. And so I went, and it's just a room, like one room, like one toilet, but it's like in the ground, you know, the squatty toilet. And then it's like not a flush, you know, it just has a continuous running water to it. And then, yeah, no sink, no soap. There was a tap, but I'm like, what do you do with that? You know? But so by then I was like, there's no way I'm getting anything done here with my tooth. But she, like I said, she was a great doctor. She spoke English, and she was, you know, she knew exactly. She just looked at it, knew exactly. When I called home to make a dentist appointment, and she's like, well, how am I, so when I'm making the appointment here, I'm like, I need to get like a root canal. She's like, well, how do you know you need a root canal? And I'm like, well, because I just saw a dentist in India. She's like, well, how did the dentist know you need a root canal? Did she do any tests? I'm like, no. Anyways, I got here and I needed a root canal. Like, so she was an excellent doctor, is my point.
So she could just tell by looking. She didn't do the standard test that they would do here, but she could just have some other way of knowing.
Yeah. I mean, she touched it a little bit, tell immediately. Maybe she has a lot of experience with it. I don't know. But anyways, I can see your friend's point, because I started getting that way too. Like my first 2 trainings, I was in the ashram. We hardly left. We were training for 12 hours a day. And then this time I was traveling more. I got to see more of the day-to-day, just walking down the street is traumatizing, because like you are always looking to make sure you're not going to get hit by a bus, a car, a motorcycle. Like pedestrians don't have the right of way. So that, it's just started getting to me. So I can see your friend's point. Like it's a lot to handle. And then, the tooth thing didn't help.
Yeah, that would be pretty wild. Yeah, if I went, I'd just want to like go out to the mountains or something like that.
That's what I said.
Wander around until I found some guy with a beard and hang out with him for a while.
Yes.
I wouldn't.
And the first time I went to this place, my teacher was building his ashram. There was trees everywhere and like part of foundation. And we did like the fire puja and a blessing for, the area, whatever. So I go back 8 years later, 6 years later, 7 years later, something like that. So 5 years ago. And the whole area is all built up. There's ashrams and whatever. I go like last month and there's tons. There's tons of ashrams. There's more being built. There's an ashram on top of an ashram. It's not the same experience, So like for you, if you're going for that retreat and meditative kind of, I want to meet a guru and do all that, like where I went wasn't the place to be. It was more white people than Indian people. You know what I mean? It was a lot of like hippies with bare feet and their dreadlocks, which I love. I love all that. But I mean, like, that's more of what it was. It was like not the authentic yoga. It was kind of like North America that just kind of went in there and, did their thing right in the city.
Yeah, like Rishikesh seems to be like the spot for the Westerner to go to get the India experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was like Ram Dass. You know who Ram Dass is?
I've heard of the name.
He was a professor at Harvard in the 60s.
He chants, right? He sings.
Yeah, he does some of that, and he's like written a bunch of books. He was a psychology professor.
Cool.
And then he got hooked up with like Timothy Leary, who was like doing a lot of acid and stuff in the 60s. And then like, so he decides to like go to India, and because he's realizing that, so he's a psychology professor at Harvard and he has these degrees and he has 50 assistants doing research and he has like all this, like everybody around him is telling him, oh, you're so great, you must know all this stuff. And he's looking around and he's like, I don't really know. And I'm looking around at these other people and they don't seem to know either, but this Timothy Leary guy seems to be on a thing. So they go to India and then he ends up meeting Bhagavan Das, who was like younger than him, and he was from like California somewhere. So he ends up like following around this dude from California around India to meet, like, so it was like this whole thing. That's what that reminded me of.
It's a really cool city. It's a really cool place for sure, and it can take you to a lot of new experiences. I'm glad I experienced Rishikesh, but I wouldn't want to stay there for like more than a couple days again. So my teacher. So when he built the ashram, it was like, and then now there's tons. So even he realizes how difficult it is to do a retreat there, So he's currently building an ashram 17 kilometers up the mountain. It's like a 2-hour drive, no Wi-Fi.
Wow.
So he's building that. It's all trees all around. There's a lake close by. It's beautiful. I just saw pictures. But he's going to do like Vipassana there and those kind of things. So if I go back, that's where I'll go.
Yeah, that would be cool to be away from I think I would get tired of being around a whole bunch of people really quick when you're looking for kind of space.
Yeah.
So when you're combining, because you're teaching yoga and you're teaching like strength and conditioning also, right? Or you teach like?
No, I'm just starting with this strength and conditioning stuff. Yeah, yoga has always been my thing. I've always taught yoga, but now I just started incorporating it too.
Okay, so all those years as a bodybuilder, you were just training yourself. You weren't really.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking that you were training people in that way also. Like, how much of your, so like, what's your schedule look like, or do you do like cycles of yoga and bodybuilding? Do you do like both?
When I switched from bodybuilding to figure, I just did yoga. I needed to size down from bodybuilding, so I just did yoga and cardio. I didn't lift any weights for a year. Wow. And I competed. I think I placed second or third because I had the muscle shape and size and whatever. And then the yoga just kept it more like defined, and I continued to diet like I normally would. But and then now it's 50-50. Like I do a lot of yoga, and I do weights like 3 times a week. You know, that's low. Like normally I would do like 5 or 6, but just recently I just because my schedule is really busy. But yoga every day.
And like are you doing like, what's your yoga practice look like? Are you doing a lot of the more athletic kinds of stuff, like the strength, hand balancing, and all that kind of stuff?
No, I don't do anything crazy like that. I don't do like the crazy weird poses like contortionist. Basic. I'm very, very alignment focused. So when I teach a class, I'm facing the same way that they are. I'm watching them in the mirror, and I'm doing it with them. If I feel like they really need to be adjusted, rarely do I touch people. I'm always giving verbal cues. So I'm always watching, and then I'm you know, like bend your knee more, you know, ground your foot more, straighten your arms, whatever it is. And I'm not specifically saying it to anyone. Like sometimes I'll point, you know, like I'll just be like, just so they know I'm talking to them, or I'll look at them. But for the most part, I'm continuously saying it, even when I need to remind myself. And then that's how I keep the practice aligned. And then I'll stop. If I see too many people are doing it improperly, I'll stop. I can't stand when I'm teaching and I've got people like misaligned. Like then I'm not a teacher. I'm not teaching you. So I'm more geared towards that. And I think that has helped me a lot with my training.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think there's people that have been yoga teachers for a while are seeing that the practice that they were doing, that they thought they had this like spiritual, physical thing going on, and then they find out, oh, now I have like SI joint problems, and my shoulders are very unstable, and I thought I was strong, but I can't carry anything. And
yeah, because I think I think yoga is good, but I don't think it's good enough. I think you still need to do a little bit of other things. Like there's not enough back strengthening, there's not enough pulling, you know, and then the overstretching. Like I did a lot of hot yoga. Like I still do hot yoga, but I cut back. But hamstring tension, like so bad, like bad inflammation, like it. I'm not saying that that's the only thing that caused it, because I am flexible, so it could have been just me like overstretching or whatever. But to do anything a lot of is not good, you know, like a lot of hot yoga, a lot of like just bodybuilding. Like there needs to be a blend of everything.
Yeah, there was a time I was going to be a yoga teacher, and like I got my first 2 yoga books when I was 15. It would have been in 1994 at a Grateful Dead concert, but it was like Krishna consciousness stuff. It was like bhakti yoga and karma, and there was no like poses. There was no warrior two and up dog and down dog. It was meditation. It was in your mind, your behavior, and your. So then that's kind of how I thought of it. And then like at my jiu-jitsu class, which I started in, I guess, 1997, our warm-up looked like what you would probably see in a yoga class. So kind of like Hindu push-ups, which, you know, kind of resemble some other stuff. And there's, and then when I actually took a yoga class, it was only about maybe 6 years ago. It was my first yoga class. And I thought, well, I have like this, I'm gonna be like, get back into like strength training. I was already, I was still training, but I was going to get back into it professionally because I quit working as a trainer because this whole thing. But then I saw, at first I thought the teacher was really good. And then after a few weeks, I was like, okay. Because he like taught Sanskrit, and he seemed to be, and he was like supposedly known as like the teacher's teacher. And he was an Ayurveda practitioner. He taught Ayurveda. And I was interested in Ayurveda, so I did some Ayurveda classes. And to be a yoga teacher through him, you had to do some Ayurveda. To get a 500-hour certification would take over 1,000 hours through him. So you do your 1,000 and some hours, he gives you your 500-hour. So I thought, okay, this is cool, this is good. And then after a while, it kind of wore off. But he started telling me that, or telling like some of the other teachers, that I was going to be one of the best yoga teachers in the country.
Wow.
And then, so like my girlfriend at that time was a yoga teacher, and she told me that. I was like, really? And then I heard like somebody else say it, and then he said it to me, and I was teaching martial arts at his studio. And then he said the same thing to me, like I'd be one of the best in the country or the region or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm going to overhaul the whole system then. You know, if I'm going to be one of the best yoga teachers, I'm going to change it, because the way I would see him like torque on people, and my girlfriend at the time, she was, I mean, she had really good mobility, but he's like torquing her legs behind her head, and she's obviously in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. If you did that at jiu-jitsu class, people would be jumping on you like, what are you doing? Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But at a yoga class, he thought this was normal. And it's like, man, that is not good. That is really inappropriate. It would be inappropriate at jiu-jitsu. And so my idea was, and then I just ended up moving on. He turned out to be creepy. Like he was, he was like violating women in the massage.
Oh my gosh.
And stuff. And he ended up being a really creepy dude.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I kind of like got away from it, and I just like tried to like teach like some, you know, like the principles when I'm doing my training, I guess, like a lot of the stuff, like the alignment and the kind of the flowing kind of.
The breathing as you're training, that's huge. Yeah.
When you're finding, like when you're going through these teacher trainings and you're studying bodybuilding, is like are you doing like a lot of single joint movements for bodybuilding, or are you thinking like more of like a movement? You're and then like how are you working together? Like how does your like strength training influence your yoga, and how do they influence each other? And like, is there argument that you?
Yeah, like you have to be engaged. Like, so say like you're doing a bicep curl at the gym. You still need to engage your core. You still need to engage your thighs. You still need to engage your whole body, even though you're just moving at one joint. It's the same thing with yoga. Like I may be in a, whatever, a tree pose or something, but my whole body is engaged. And so like you have that body awareness of being fully strong always. Like even in Tadasana, like you're not even lifting anything, but you're engaged and feeling powerful. So that's definite translation between the two of them. And like I said, I'm so aware of my body and my movements now. Like I'm not saying I'm coming up with new exercises, but like I know what my body needs. So like if I feel like I need more of a external rotation strength or whatever, like I know how to do that, you know, either with my body weight or with weights at the gym or a machine or whatever. So I've learned a lot about anatomy and function. So they definitely both work together.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like even if you're standing there doing a standing bicep curl, like what are your legs doing? What are your toes doing? And what are like,
Right.
it's a total body exercise. So like when you're like tuning into what you need at the moment, are you planning out your sessions? Like, do you know what you're going to do tomorrow at the gym?
Never. Sometimes, like today, I did squats and leg press because I knew today was leg day. And so yesterday, I was like, what do I want to do tomorrow? So, like, I'll put that in kind of what I want to do. Same thing, like, I taught a class today. So, I'm doing this fusion class, I call it. So, I do yoga, Pilates, and bar. And it's women in my class, and there's about 8 to 12 people. And it's crazy because I'm watching these women. And it's the little things that I think are so like normal, like stand with your legs engaged and abdominals tucked and the whole bit, you know, it's really cool to see the progression too as I'm teaching them. But yeah, again, I went off on a tangent. What were we saying?
It's how they like. Do you know how much do you plan your workouts?
Oh yeah,
Going
so
by
that's
your
what I'll do. So I'll watch these women, and then I'll see what they need to do next. So like, so today I knew that I wanted to do like, so it's glute focused, it's core and glute focused, these classes. So I, brought the bands that go around your knees to do like the wide knee, glute exercises and stuff like that. So I'll have kind of an idea of what I want to do, but I change it as I'm watching my students. So it's never an actual, my classes are never the same. My workouts are never the same.
Yeah, that's really good. A lot of times with clients, I'll have it pretty much all written out, but then they come in, their shoulder's a little sore, and then, change things. And then for my own, I just looked at my workout notebook. It was like last week, and I realized I hadn't written anything down in over a year.
Oh, cool.
And because I was just going in, I had like this knee injury, so there were times when I first got it, I couldn't even stand there. I couldn't do a standing press.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't like carry anything.
Yeah.
And I couldn't I got to let this knee heal, and I can't help but walk on it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked back, and it'd been over a year since I wrote anything down. And so, yeah, it's just like tuning in, like what you can do and what you need.
Instinctive. Yeah. And I think the longer you do it, the more you become aware. If you're aware when you're working out, So that's what I'm trying to promote is, and I'm not calling it yoga so much, like the bodybuilding training. I'm calling it more mobility because I don't want to scare guys away from doing yoga. But incorporating breath is going to be a big thing. Meditation, I'm going to do that because a lot of, the hardcore gym people don't give themselves rest, So I'm going to incorporate that and some, sports psychology too, like especially for competitors, like to prepare mentally for stage presence and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I saw that you were thinking of competing again.
I'm always thinking about competing.
Do you have like a show that you're looking at, or?
Yeah. I'm like a closet competitor. I never tell anyone until like the day of the show. So like people will see me dieting and they're like, "You doing a show?" I'm like, no. And then I'll just like always cover up. I don't like the pressure. People are like, "Oh, how's your diet going? You think you're gonna make it? How many weeks out are you? And you're starving and people are like, let's go for dinner and you can have a bite, So I just rather I usually become a hermit when I'm doing my training. But The show that I'm thinking about doing is in June. It's the Nationals. It's a pro qualifier. So I've done so many shows, so many pro qualifiers, and I still have not become pro. So I don't know, it's just one of those things. Like I just want to go for it again one more time, give it a shot.
So you have, like what was holding you back from like qualifiers? So you were able
Well, like
to.
I said, it was the dieting for me. I'm not going to get a coach, but last week I just hired a posing coach. So he's definitely helping me tweaking some things. So maybe if it was the posing, I'm going to get that on track. I may have to do some kind of a steroid, but I'm definitely not going to do as much as I did before. And I'm going to make sure I do the proper coming off of it and whatever else. If I need to, though, like if I like, I don't want to do it, but at the same time, like if it's going to help me and if I do it properly, then I might.
Yeah, I would think there's a way to not and just kind of like figure it out. Do you do like a lot of supplements or?
Tons. I love supplements. I love vitamins. I work at a health food store too, so I'm all about it. New research and stuff. Yeah. So right now I'm taking collagen for my joints and skin. Um, vitamin D. I take biotin and multivitamin. Greens. Huge fan. Greens Plus or greens powder.
Mm-hmm.
And oil. I do a lot of Udo's oil, flaxseed blended with coconut and whatever. So just the blended oils, omegas, probiotics. Definitely after that India trip, I'm actually doing like a parasite cleanse right now, which I don't have any symptoms, but it can't hurt to do the cleanse.
Yeah. I usually don't do very much with the supplements, but not too long ago I started with creatine.
Oh yeah,
taking it in a really long time.
Plus, you're a vegetarian; you need it.
Yeah, and that's a possibility. And I mean, I haven't eaten meat since I was 15, and so I've achieved pretty good like strength and endurance, and can pretty much do whatever I want with my body. But I thought, well, maybe it'll help. I'll see what it can do. It's like $20 for 100 servings, and it seemed to be like, I believe it. Like so much of the supplements, like it's expensive and the research is sketchy. And, but then I started hearing, I think it was Joe Rogan talk about creatine is now being recognized as a nootropic, like a mental enhancer, which kind of makes sense if, and so I kind of looked into that a little bit. I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing. So I thought that the nootropics were interesting. I didn't know a lot about them, and Joe Rogan's always talking about, like the Alpha Brain, and of course he owns part of On It. Mm-hmm. So but he's like, I listen to him a lot. And he knows so much about so much stuff. It's like, I think he's a pretty good example of if there's
advice for you for creatine.
If he's saying that this nootropic is good, and I'm watching him and he's doing 3 hours a day with scientists one day and MMA fighters the next, and he just knows so much about all these subjects, like, well, maybe. But then when I was looking up creatine, it was like it could be like one of the best ones.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of a new. It's just in the last couple months that I started really looking into that. And then I got like some branch chain amino acids, and that was because I saw Joe's podcast with Ross Edgley. Do you know who he is?
No.
Yeah, I just discovered him. He swam around Great Britain.
Oh.
It took him 12 hours a day for 157 days. He is swimming against like currents and waves, and he's like, sometimes like he'd think he hit a boat, like he'd be swimming and he thought that he like hit the boat, but it was just a wave. So he has, and if you saw a picture of him, you would think this guy's not an endurance athlete. He's ready to win a bodybuilding competition right now.
Wow.
But he has, his is I bought his book, and it's the first like fitness book that I've bought in a long time. I always get them from the library and read stuff for free. But yeah, so he's like swimming, and he's just like jacked. He's cut, and he doesn't look like he's going to win an endurance race at all. But he said, if you have like somebody like a Michael Phelps or somebody like that wins, they're like lean, and yeah, he looks like he's obviously in good shape, but he's not, physically that impressive to look at. He's like, at first you might think that, he's going to beat me. And if it was just a short race, yeah, he'd smoke him easily. But if you're talking about swimming around Great Britain,
yeah,
then that's a whole different thing. And like just having like the power. So he got like some lessons from pro swimmers, and then he was like realizing that doesn't apply in the ocean over that amount of time. So he's more like just kind of like powering himself through these waves and these currents and vortexes, and he's getting stung by jellyfish, and like he got like stung on the face, and then he was like telling like the crew, he's like, man, I got stung and it still hurts. And he's like, they're like, yeah, it's because it's still attached to your face. Like he had this jellyfish on his face for like hours, and he's just like swimming along, and
oh my goodness,
his face swelled up, and then his goggles wouldn't seal, and he had like smashed his goggles into his face. And
that sounds horrible.
yeah, it's crazy. And he's like did this a triathlon carrying 100-pound tree. Swimming with it behind him. He has a 100-pound tree on his back, riding his bike, and he's carrying it when he's running. And he did that like it was like, I forget which marathon it was, but it's like called the world's most beautiful marathon or something like that, or triathlon. And it was like this on some island that's trying to be carbon neutral. And so his friend that's organizing the event is like, will you do this and like carry something heavy so we can get some publicity? And so 100-pound tree seemed to be the symbol for that.
Wow.
And yeah, he said that like what got him to swim around Great Britain was he like did some other like swimming feat or something. And he's like, some fat guy just said, well, why don't you just swim around Great Britain? And like, well,
why don't I?
Okay. 157 days of just.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Eating in the water, like, and never getting back on land. So 150 days and taking in 15,000 calories a day. And it couldn't be anything to upset your stomach because it's, the waves and seasickness. And yeah, this dude is really amazing. And I was like, I read about 100 pages of his book today. It was like just
cool.
Blowing my mind. But yeah, he's an interesting one I forget what made me bring him up. But he's a cool one to check out for sure. And he just seems like this like real jolly, happy guy, just joking around and real happy, but just a savage competitor, just willpower, mental.
The mental focus there is amazing.
Yeah, and it's he's really something else. He's definitely one to study. I can't remember what brought it up, what I was talking about, but so you have like 6 months for till your competition. Like, do you have like your training plan for that whole 6 months, and like how much is yoga going to go to the back of your mind or is it going to be so prominent?
No, yoga is definitely a huge part of my training, but I'll probably bring up my weight training days to 5 days a week, maybe 4, depending, maybe probably 5. Add in cardio, probably like 4 months out, and then like the diet, usually 3 months out. So I'll start dieting like March, April, May.
And then the supplements is what reminded me of him, because he said to make sure you're taking your branched chain amino acids
Oh
after your workouts.
yeah, right.
And so it's like, okay, if that's what he said, those, I believe in those too. I can,
Yeah,
that's not a stretch for me to like, so
yeah.
that's why I started taking those. And then, so you'll have like, do you have like a target weight that you want to be?
Kind of, yeah. Like I usually just kind of go by what I competed at the last show, you know. So I would probably, I don't know, maybe 20 pounds I'd have to lose.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't guess that by looking at you. And then
Oh, I mean, that's like including like water stuff. I'd say like probably 15 actual pounds. I haven't weighed myself in a while, so I'm not sure.
do you, like, is it kind of like fighting where you like cut most of your weight like the day before or 2 days before or something like that? Or
Yeah, like I've always done my own diet and training, so it's always been different every time I've done it. But for the most part, I cut out my water the day before the show around noon, and then I just sip water.
and when you posted a picture on Instagram not too long ago, and it's like from the side, like your delts were all, like really impressive delts. Do you know the picture I'm talking about? Was that a bodybuilding or was that the figure?
Was it a competition photo?
Yeah.
It would have been figure. Any of my bodybuilding photos are like I said, 16 years old or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was like the one thing that, I mean, you look good all over, but the delts I thought were like
Thanks.
pretty impressive.
That's a big thing for figure girls. Delts, it's huge. Yeah. They always want big shoulders, small waist, tight glutes. That's what they want. Now they want big thighs too. Not big thighs, but thicker, hamstrings and quads. So I'm working on getting that's why I wanted to do squats and leg press today, because I just got to get my legs. I've always had thick legs. I've always had they grow big, fast. So I cut down on training heavy legs because they didn't want big legs, back in the day. So now I just have to amp up my leg training. But thanks.
Yeah. So what kind of, like you said, squats and leg press, do you do a bunch of different, are you thinking like, okay, I'm going to target the quads more today, hamstrings more, like all legs in one day? And like, are you doing just a ton of different techniques, or are you?
I got the best results of leg training when I did squats 3 days a week. So I might do that. I might incorporate that for the next little while and just see how I grow. But the yoga, we're always doing lunges, like chair pose. We're doing like body weight squats, a lot of like balancing stuff. So it's a lot of like leg stuff there too. So I think that I get a lot of that, alternative movement, because you got to have that different angle to get the proper, roundness of the muscle, which I do incorporate at the gym. But I also do a lot of like specific, leg press squats and that. I don't really change that up too much, but I find I get more out of the yoga for the little things, the fine points, fine tuning.
Yeah, that makes sense. I heard when he was on my show, James Fuller, he was talking about like stretching the muscle in 3D. And I don't think I ever really thought about that before like that, but like getting a pump, but also working your range of motion. So you're it's stretching the muscle in every direction. And just like for some reason, when he was saying that to me, it kind of like lit up something that I never really visualized in that way before.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah, he's a pretty brilliant guy. It's like what about like the upper body and like abs? What techniques are your?
I do abs pretty much every day because I'm doing, yoga. So yoga is like planks and, side plank and And I teach power yoga, so we do a lot of like just regular core stuff, you know. Like we'll use the block, we'll do some like Pilates movements too, like holding the block with your elbow and your knee, and you know. So I do tons of different angles of abs, and not excuse me, not a lot of excuse me, not a lot of weighted abs. I might incorporate them, but right now, maybe only once or twice a week I'll do weighted abs.
Because you don't want them to get thicker?
No, just no. Because that's when I'm at the gym, I guess. I'm only working out 3 days a week with weights, so that's probably why.
Yeah, today I was messing around. I just got a new weight vest, a 60-pound weight vest,
I saw that on Instagram.
and just kind of like laying down, like doing get-ups. I was wanting to do get-ups, like kettlebell get-ups all the way down, but my toes messed up and I can't bend it back very far. So I was just kind of like doing these like sitting up kind of things. And I just did them for, I don't know how long I did them, but it was for a while. It's
Cool.
like, I think this is going to be a pretty neat, because it hits kind of that weird angle, kind of like oblique kind of thing.
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah.
up and down and into the hips also, hip
And it's just the
extension.
way the whole body moves together to get there, you know, and that's the whole thing with how yoga is, you know, beneficial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're using the whole body to do one thing, you know, whereas with like training, a lot of times it's just like one angle and that's it. So they definitely work well together.
Yeah, I'd done those before, but not with a weight. And then
Mm-hmm.
of course, I've done kettlebell get-ups and barbell get-ups and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
uh, so do you do very many machines besides like the leg press, or do you do mostly free weights for your?
It's half and half, probably. Yeah, I don't have a preference.
And what about like rep ranges?
Currently, I'm doing like 12 to 15. Sometimes I'll do 8 to 10. I rarely go less than that. I'm, you know, I don't want to go super heavy and hurt myself. And it's not, I really don't think it's necessary to go super heavy. I think you can still get good size, good shape, you know, it doesn't have to be like, you know, light, because I'm still strong, but I'm just not overdoing it and pushing, and never, you know, try to go for like my max or anything like that.
Yeah, that's probably smart. Like
Yeah.
leave some in the bank. So like how
Yeah.
many sets is that? How long is your typical lifting session?
40 minutes.
That's good. How long have you been doing it like that? Did you used to do a lot longer and you just didn't think it was necessary, or?
No, it's always been like that. If I'm with my training partner, it's a little bit longer, but no, it's always been pretty get in, get out. And you know, sometimes my trainer was, or my the girl I was training with, she was really into like Arnold and stuff back in the day. So we did a couple of his programs that she would get out of like a magazine. So, and they were never like super crazy workouts.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll be interested to see what you do. I'll have to look back at that.
Ah,
Uh,
if I
but you're trying to keep it a secret. Everybody around the world is going to know now because of being on the show. But
I know. Oh
Eric
well.
Yates said that he used to do that also. Like he'd like wouldn't like let any pictures be taken or anything. He's always wearing like big sweatshirts, and like wherever he was going, he was all covered up, and 'cause he's like working on this masterpiece, and he'll unveil it
Yeah.
at the competition and
Yeah.
blow everybody's mind. Then
Yeah.
it's probably a good way to go. Do you have like, is the friend of yours that you're like your training partner, is she planning to do the same competition?
Well, I don't work out with that girl anymore. That was like 15 years ago. But I have my training partner is a guy now, and I don't think he talks about it, but I don't think he's actually going to do it. It's a lot of work. Like you have to put so much time into it. He owns a business, and so to be able to like take that time away, you know, It's a lot of work. So I don't think that he's gonna do it. But I'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, it's cool to have something to work towards.
Yeah.
I don't have a competition or anything that I'm preparing for, but the second level of my Strong First certification is in April, and it's kind of tough. I should be fine, but I turn 40 that day, so
Awesome.
I'll wake up on my birthday, turning 40, and I'll be in Chicago, and I'll be waking up and going, and the first thing you do is you retest your level 1, and then so your first when you first get there, you're doing your snatch test, and then you start your level 2 stuff, and it's kind of interesting timing on that, like hitting 40 and doing this next
That's awesome.
thing. But it's cool to have something to focus on, something to drive towards, and
Yeah, I'm like that too. I need something to look forward to and work towards.
yeah. With your like yoga, and you've been doing it for like 20 some years.
Yeah, like 20.
So like, how much of that is like this spiritual sort of practice versus like a physical, or do you
When
see
I
the physical as spiritual also, or?
Yeah, I'm getting more into the spiritual thing now. I think a lot of teachers do, a lot of people in general, when they get into yoga, it's more of the fitness, like my back hurts, my doctor said I should do it, that kind of thing. But as you evolve, like you eventually realize it's not just a physical thing. Like any kind of exercise, you have to like be mentally focused and aware when you're working out with anything, you know. So yeah, especially now that I'm teaching, I'm incorporating a lot more into my classes. But when I first started, it was strictly just physical. So yeah, I love the meditation part of it because that helps so much when you're dieting, like when you're starving, and like that helps you to be like calm, like like take a break. Don't let the instinct to want to grab peanut butter or whatever. You can kind of breathe it down, or not, or you can be aware and be like, I want this peanut butter and I'm going to eat it. So like it's I guess being in control of yourself is when you're dieting, there's a lot going on where you just want
Yeah, I think some people will kind of, and maybe it's been myself also, even though I've always been into like the physical stuff since I was a little kid, but like, oh, yoga, it's a spiritual thing. It doesn't have anything to do with physical stuff. And I don't really think that way very much, but sometimes those thoughts creep in. But even I've seen videos of Iyengar, and he was talking about when he was first getting into yoga as a little boy, and he was sick. And so whoever was interviewing was asking him about spiritual stuff. He's like, I didn't have health. I wasn't thinking about spirituality. I was
to.
trying to be healthy
Yeah,
and strong. So like, what good is? I mean, you can argue it the other way too. You have the spirituality if you're not strong, but his
yeah,
thing was like, I wasn't worried about. It wasn't a spiritual thing to me. It was a physical thing. I'm trying to get strong and healthy.
yeah.
I mean, it's just like that.
They both lead to one another, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and the tie between the yoga and the bodybuilding goes back a really long way. And there's a buddy of mine at my gym. He's getting more into bodybuilding. He's planning on doing a show, and he's a yoga teacher. Was I already say that? And he's a really cool guy. He's been on my show before I had video, but there's only 2 black male yoga teachers in Indianapolis, and he's one of them. There's some other like black women, but like black males, there's only 2,
Mhm.
and he's one of them. And he doesn't like try to make it that a thing, but it's kind of a thing.
Yeah,
And so he incorporates into his with his clients. They're um, especially if there's not very many people in the gym at the time, or there's not a class going on. like whatever music is going on, and then he takes them to like the room with the more the padded floor, and then puts on some like yoga music, and they're doing these 10 minutes of finishing out that way, and it all goes together really well, I think, if you know how to put it together very well.
Yeah, I love it.
So I think I'm about out of questions for you. I've had you on for like an hour or so. It goes fast. I try not to tie people up too long. Is there anything that we haven't got into that you're wanting to talk about?
No, I don't think so. That's my passion. That's what I'm focusing on right now. I'm working towards that. Just setting up more classes. I'd like to eventually start offering online training with this, genre, the bodybuilding and yoga and mobility. So I'm working on that.
Yeah. So if people wanted to work with you online now, could they do that?
No. I got a website. I just got it last week. But what I'm going to do is my next session that I run, I'll record it and then post that to the website. And then that way people can have access to it for free. And then that way I can build upon it. I want people to, because this is like, I want to do what people need, especially specifically lifters and bodybuilders and that sort of thing. So I'm going to offer it out, and then I want to see what people get the most benefit of, if they need any more, focus on any other areas, whatever. So I'm continuously growing, but I think that that will probably be available not till January.
Okay, it's not too far away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think more and more online training, I think it's going to get more and more popular. We're attracted to these people that don't live close to us, and like, oh, I'd like to work with her, and well, I'm in Indianapolis and you're in Windsor, and here we are, so in the same place, kind of. So I think more and more it's going to be
with all of it though, like there's so much that you can do with this online stuff, like I was telling you about the MAT training I want to do. Like that's like a full year of online and 4 weekends in a classroom, So it's cool, like how much you can do with online stuff. It's a lot though. I don't know. I never grew up with computers, so I'm still learning. That's why it's taking me a bit of time to get this whole YouTube thing going and stuff.
Yeah, the technology thing doesn't come easily for me either. I've spent a long time just figuring out like what button to push, or like,
yes.
and it's tough, but it's definitely worth it. The online stuff, I think, especially when you're, you've already done so much. You've been doing yoga for a long time, and the bodybuilding, the ins and outs of these seemingly different worlds, but they really go together really well. So I would think that you would be a hit with it for sure.
Thanks.
And so for your classes, are you teaching? You're at yoga studios and a regular like fitness gym, or?
Yeah, I'm at a gym and a hot yoga studio and a regular yoga studio. So I'm all over the place. Well, in one day, I'm doing at least 2 jobs. I also do massage therapy. I also work at the health food store. So I like to be busy, like no 2 days are the same, but it's good for me like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I work at like 3 different places, and sometimes I'm at all of them in one day.
One day, yeah, it's good. I like that. I like it.
Yeah. So if people want to get a hold of you, I guess if they're just in your town or want to, because people are going to be listening to this. People are still listening to shows from months and months ago. People are still listening to, so people might be finding this just right when you're in January. So how can people get a hold of you for?
The website is called flexandflexibility.com. So you can access, the videos will be up on that. It'll have a YouTube channel button.
Flex and Flexibility?
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Great, isn't it? Yeah, I came up with it myself.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's easy to remember. That's catchy and says a lot.
Yeah.
So, very cool. Is there anything else that we?
Well, let's do this again, like maybe like
Yeah,
in 3, 4, 5 months, like when I'm
yeah,
in the middle of the training and you can see where I'm at. Just
yeah,
like be stuck to the plan, knowing that I have to check back in with you.
yeah. I'll hold you accountable.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for coming on the show. It was really good to know more about you, and
Thank
I think you
you.
can give people that are training a lot of ideas and like these worlds that seem so different. Because I think a lot of probably women, especially that are into yoga, might look at weights
Yes.
as like they're
I'm
um,
gonna get bulky.
poisonous or something like that,
Yeah,
or get bulky. Yeah, there's that one.
yeah,
And they don't know that they'd have to try really hard for a long time to get bulky. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
like that's my clientele too. So I'm working with bodybuilders, but I'm also working with like women who've only ever done yoga or only ever done Pilates. So
mhm.
I've got them in my classes doing like just 8-pound weights, like nothing heavy, but focusing on alignment and even like even an 8-pound weight is hard for some women to lift up. Like so proper alignment. If you can't do the 8, grab the 2. Like so I'm very yeah, I love all of it. So I have the two you know people that I'm going towards, bodybuilders and the yoga people, and then I'm gonna make them do the same thing.
Yeah, very cool. It'll be interesting to see how all this stuff progresses over the years. I've seen so much evolution because we have Instagram and we have all these like ancient secrets are just on Instagram now, and
Hmm.
we have access to all these really great teachers, and it's I think most of this stuff is only getting better and better
I think so
as
too.
as we are able to more easily access the information. So
Yeah.
so all right, well, I will let you go. Thanks again for coming on, and I'll talk to you for just a second after we're done with the recording.
Great. Thank you.
Find the button here.